I knew that there was a special connection between Canadians and the Dutch. But what I liked about it was that I got to see your family, but I got to see the big picture, but I also got to see the royal family.
Yeah.
We didn't really plan on, sort of having them parallel the way that it worked out, but somebody mentioned, I think, early on that the royal family in Holland is very, very much revered, and
especially at that time.
Yeah, especially at that time. So we knew, and we also knew that our grandparents felt the same way. So once we started looking into doing some research on the royal family, we realized there were all these similarities and all these parallels, but at the same time it was a really interesting contrast. So it just seemed natural to
weave them in,
fit them in.
And I think the interesting thing is too that we didn't realize right away when we were writing about our family. We were trying to find out what happened in Holland in a larger sense during the war, and we knew that there was the aspect of resistance and of collaboration, and there was the royal family thing going on, and there was the difficulties of the Jewish people going on, and all of those kinds of things happening. But what didn't come together until the later drafts was the connection of all of those things to our own family, and I think that's what ends up shaping the story so beautifully, is that there's a cousin who was involved in the resistance and who was tortured by the Germans at the prison. And there's, their neighbor, who was a Jewish man who eventually fled Holland in 1942. And there was another neighbor who took in a Jewish couple during the war, and they had their babies. They were born to them while they were in hiding. But all those different aspects that tell the story of Holland, we managed to connect those things to our own family.
In a direct way.
Yeah.
Being an occupied country means you got bombed by both sides, which is quite horrible. I mean, one of the worst. Sunday, March 1945? I think is the name of the chapter.
Yeah.
And it starts off as a perfectly ordinary day.
People living in Holland at the time had a glimmer that the end was near. So. The end of the war was near. There was some hope. There was, something on the horizon to look forward to. So the events of March 18th, 1945, are doubly tragic in a way because of that. But I'll let you go ahead and recount that.
Well, I think people had also just come through the hunger winter. That's the term that it's been given in Holland, where many thousands of people died of starvation, and our family was particularly lucky that Opal was a market gardener, so they always had, some sort of food, even though it was pretty meager at times. But at that time, in the Hague and area, which is where our family was from, rockets were being sent over from the occupied territory to England and also to Belgium.
They'd be the V2s.
The V2s, yeah. And so the places where they would send the rockets from, the launch sites, were always changing, so that they wouldn't be bombed by the Allied Spitfires. And so there was a lot of activity going on daily, and they heard sounds of bombs all the time. It was not uncommon at all. But on this particular Sunday, our aunt Riga and our Oma were at church together, and they heard these bombs falling in the near distance. And it turns out that they were falling right behind the house, our family's house on the Taylorstraat. And our father and our uncle were severely wounded after that. But the way we tried to write the chapter, because it was so difficult to piece those moments together, we wrote it in a very fragmented way, so that right now we're with Riga at church, and we're finding out, what she's hearing and what she's wondering. And then in the next moment, we're with the neighbors who are on their way to the church, and they're running late, and they also hear the bombs falling in the distance. And then in another moment, we're with some people who were in the house at the time. And so it just sort of moves all around the incident, trying to get at the actual story of that day, which was very difficult.
Which is
to
also
find.
how we got the information in those
Yeah.
sort of similar ways and from those people.
Yeah.
Well, your dad's recollection is 1 minute he's playing outside, he hears a noise, feels pressure, and then
Yeah.
the next thing he's riding in a cart and
Yeah, he looks down. I think he looks down at his leg and he sees
One
blood
foot
in
on
his
the
shin
grass.
bone.
And, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, and I mean, at that point, he's 7.
why your family? I mean, someone says, well, why should I care about the Den Hartogs? They're not the royal family, they're just ordinary people.
Yeah. And that's
That's
why,
part
I
of it,
guess.
I think, is that they are just ordinary
That's the
people.
beauty of it, I
which,
think.
Ordinary people, things happen. And, on some level we always knew, we had family anecdotes and little bits of stories here and there growing up. And we just always thought it was an interesting story that a lot of people could relate to on a number of different levels.
Yeah.
Because you see the big canvas all the time, but you want to see, but what was it really like?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe prompt people to ask the questions while there's still some grandparents
Yes.
around to ask the questions.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The book is The Occupied Garden, recovering the story of a family in war-torn Netherlands. I've been speaking with the authors and sisters, Kristen Den Hartog and Tracy Kasaboski, and The Occupied Garden, published by McClellan Stewart.